Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Woolley, aka Stray.
And I'm Elizabeth Gearhart, also known as Calico. And we're the Jersey
PodCats.
PodCats.
So welcome
welcome to
back,
the show.
everybody. See, when our brains are going to sync up, and I love how new this is for us. For those of you who are following along, Elizabeth and I only met maybe a month or two ago at this point, so we're still figuring out our flow and riffing off people. But we do know, as far as format goes, is we like to bring on really cool everyday people who love cats.
Right. We love cats. And if you've listened to our other podcasts, you know that there was a specific reason we started this. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because you can go back and listen if you want. But we will be referring to it throughout the show. But Mollie is a comedian and Danielle, a friend of Danielle's. And Danielle found Mollie and said, this would be so great to have on our podcast. And I agree.
Yeah. And it's cool too, because Mollie and I met a very long time ago. I was trying to figure out how many years ago, but quite a few years ago, through just local networking, different women's groups that we're in. And I was at a conference. And I sense a theme here now that I'm saying it out loud. Elizabeth and I met at a conference. Mollie and I reconnected at a conference for New Jersey nonprofits. And we happened to be in the same room. And I heard her voice before I saw her face. I was looking around. I was like, is Mollie here? And I saw her. And then immediately I obviously was talking about the podcast in the meeting breakout session that we were in. So as soon as we started talking, we said she had to be on.
Yeah, you had said during the breakout session that you had a podcast about cats. And I'm like, once we reconnected, I'm like, by the way, this podcast about cats, tell me everything.
Yeah, she totally did. She did. So what I'd like to talk a little bit about before we kind of go in and do like your formal intro and kind of jump into the topics of the day is I would like to start off by continuing the conversation from last episode. So it's funny how when you're talking about things and then you're done and then later on you're like, oh, I should have said this. I feel like that's going to be the theme of every episode. Who knows? We'll figure out the format on that later. But Elizabeth, remember we were talking about like different routines the cats have and like funny things that they do.
Yes.
Or things that they do that drive you crazy. I came up with such a long list. You were telling me though, like, because it's cold outside in New Jersey right now, and Mollie happens to be in New Jersey as well.
Right. It is down in the teens, and my cats go out. They don't go far. We have a wooded backyard. We have a screen porch and we have a deck, and I can make them stay on the screen porch if I need to. But my one cat, Lily. So if you look at our YouTube channel, Lily is the cat in the portrait drinking a cup of tea. And she loves to go out, and she's just stands right up to like close to me and looks at me with these big cat eyes and meows at me. She's like, how come you're so dumb? You can't understand this. So it got up to 15 or got up to 25 actually a day. So I did let her out because she has to go check on all her little things in the backyard. Like she has a lot of cat things going on out there. So I did let her out, but boy, she is, talk about Danielle, or no, it was Mollie talking about her cat sounding like it was being strangled to death. That's what
she'll get into that later.
Yeah, she'll get into that later. That's what my cats do. Mercutio and Lily, if you don't let them out when they need to go out, they go crazy. And of course, they have a cat box in the basement, so it's not like they have to go out to use that.
Mollie, did your cats go outside at all? I don't think I got to ask you that yet.
We've kept indoor cats strictly.
Yeah, and so have we, and it's different. You know, there's different circumstances. In the beginning, like I just thought like, no, cats can't go outside. But then when I started getting into rescue, I'm like, no, there's cats that absolutely have to be outside. And then if you have the property for it, it makes sense. You know, you have a safe space for them to go in and out. It's just so different. So we would definitely like to do that as a future topic to kind of talk about the pros and cons and what people have seen and open people's minds to allowing it, you know?
Yeah, all my cats are rescues. So they were all living outside. Well, Mercutio was found in a dumpster behind a Best Buy. And Lily was found with kittens. I mean, they were all living outside, and it's just part of their DNA at this point, I think.
Yeah, well, the crazy routine related thing that one of my cats did this morning, which drove me pretty bonkers, is I went around and cleaned all the water bowls. So not that I don't keep them clean, but like, you do like that deep clean like every couple of days or so. And I have 4 cats total. So we have a bowl upstairs in our main bathroom because while we're doing our morning routine, there's, one of my cats have to have their water and they'll sit there and stare at you until you fill it. Even if I just filled it, if you didn't see you fill it, it doesn't count. Then clean the downstairs ones, there's another one in the main room, and there's one on the counter. And then my ones that came from outside most recently that were rescued last year will not drink out of those bowls unless there's no dishes in the sink. They check the sink first. So they look for dirty dishes that have water in it. And it was right after I just got done cleaning all the dishes. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I give up.
I know, it's so strange. Like, you wonder what goes through their furry little brains.
And they're like, what? I'm just drinking water. What did you think I did outside before you saved me? So Mollie, thank you so much for being here. Mollie Sperduto, everybody. I would love for you to share a little bit about who you are, you know, what you love about cats, what you love about doing in life, how the two worlds collide. And then also you have to tell us who the two adorable kitty cats are behind you.
Yes.
You'll see in your background.
So yes, I'll move over to the side a little bit. So the gray fluff ball to the left is Goblin, and next to her is the ginger cat is Echo. My husband and I each brought a cat into the marriage. It's easy to tell who was whose because my cat was the ginger cat, and then his cat is the cat that is as fluffy as his face because he's got a lot of facial hair.
And the reason that's extra funny is tell everybody the name of your comedy business.
Yeah, so I own a company called Ginger Ninja Productions. And I put together stand-up comedy shows for fundraisers and all sorts of other events, and I'm a stand-up comedian myself. So the story that we were alluding to before, funny way where cats in my comedy world collided was during COVID. We were doing Zoom shows, which is a whole other chapter in and of itself. But on this particular day, so I had where I was doing any of my Zoom performances was in our spare bedroom. I had like professional black backdrop curtains set up, a microphone stand that was there for prop. And I would close myself in and do my performances there. And
I just got flashbacks to Zoom because I remember how excited, to the Zoom-esque events back in I don't even like saying the word COVID, but during that time, we'll say.
Yeah.
And I remember how fun it was in the beginning because I actually loved when people brought their animals on. Like there were people that were complaining about it. I'm like, oh, bring your dog back, please.
Yeah, and in fact, if you see like the my camera shaking or something, it's because my Goblin is over here staring at me, claiming the laptop as her own by rubbing her cheek against the corner. She
sounds about right.
Occasionally, if my light source goes out, it's because she's eclipsing it from me. So yeah, she's desperately trying to be a part of this. But I was performing, doing like 30 minutes on this particular Zoom show, and with about 5-10 minutes to go, I'm telling a joke. And so Echo, may she rest in kitty heaven, was very, very attached to me. So if I was in a room with the door shut, she wanted no part of that. She wanted to be wherever I was. And
was she ninja kicking the door down if you close the door?
Nah, I mean, not at that age, no, but she probably could have in her younger years. But once she got the sense that she also like lost her hearing by that, by the end of her life, but she definitely had the sense that I was behind this one closed door because I was nowhere else in the house, and I guess she could smell me. So she was sitting on the opposite end of the door. I'm telling jokes and just incessant just over and over and over again. And in my head, I'm like, just keep going through, just push through this joke, get to the punchline, and then maybe ask them if they hear a cat.
Well, I was going to ask at this point, was anybody in the chat saying, who is that? Someone go save that cat.
No, I didn't see anything. So in my head, I'm like, maybe they don't hear her. But I know from like other Zoom meetings that I've done in that room where she's wanted to come in, like people have heard her. So I was like, people can probably hear her. So I should probably say something. So after I finished that joke, I was like, does anyone hear a cat? And you see people going, uh-huh. So I was like, well, she's not going to stop until I bring her in. So give me a sec. So I like put my earbuds down, went out, picked her up, and I knew she would behave well as long as I was holding her. She wasn't going to go anywhere. So
So I don't know. I think it might have added to the show if you did let her kind of run amok around. Sounds like her personality though wouldn't quite be that way, no?
our spare room was under construction, and she would have gotten places where she was not allowed to be in. Like you would not be able to, you weren't able to tell because I had like it zeroed in on just that like backdrop curtain.
Mhm.
But everything, like I was basically performing it to a Zoom screen, and then beyond that, like a couple of rolls of insulation.
Did she give you any show notes at the end of it?
I think she was the best part of my show. But and there's even like there were, it was for like a chamber of commerce that I was doing the show for, so, and there were a couple people on the call that I knew, so I was like, while I'm doing this, can someone just please screen cap this and send it to me? So I have a couple pictures of like me doing stand up holding Echo, and being that she only lived a few weeks longer, unbeknownst to me at the time, those became a lot more meaningful to me, like those photos.
Wow.
Aw.
Wow. Yeah.
Now,
Well, and
Elizabeth,
yeah, I was just coughing. Sorry. We try to figure out ways to make these cats useful, and it's usually impossible, but you found a way, right? You put her in your comedy routine.
Yeah, we became the Ginger Ninjas that night.
that's
Yeah.
cute.
I mean, I would love it if they could fetch me like a cup of tea or, you just can't get them to do that.
Now, as far as how Goblin came into the picture, because I know one of the conversations you and I had is about how your boyfriend at the time, now husband, came to be cats are all right to, kind of owning the love of the cats in the house pretty much.
Yes. So during Hurricane Sandy, my mother and I lost power for about a week and a half, whereas my husband had gotten his back in his apartment within like 3 or 4 days, which wasn't the biggest deal, but it was getting really cold.
I remember. Yeah, we
yes.
didn't have
Yeah.
power either for I think 10 or 11 days.
It was
Yeah.
miserable. Yeah.
So my mom was like, I'm going to go to my aunt's. I can bring Echo with me if you want me to. I'm like, no, we're not taking Echo to a strange house where I'm not going to be at. I'm going to bring her with me to Justin's. So this was a very quick decision. So I called him. I'm like, hey, so I'm coming over. I'm staying for a few days. I'm bringing Echo, and I'll get you a bottle of rum. Thanks.
And he was like, wait, what?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, like just keep going, just keep going. But yeah, so wound up staying there for about 3 or 4 days before things got settled back in our house, and they became buddies because my husband is the type of person to be a little bit more on the nocturnal side. So after I would go to bed, she would leave the bedroom and then like join him on the couch to get brushed and watch him play video games. And so yeah, they got along. And so flash forward a couple days later, I settled back into my house with my mom, and I'm at his place one weekend, and I'm joining him in bed. He's scrolling through his phone. I'm like, what you doing? He's like, looking up cats at the animal shelter. I'm like,
Because
"Of course
prior
you
to
are."
that, wasn't he like, I'm not really a cat guy, but whatever.
He grew like like his mom had a couple of cats, but they were like in outdoor cats. So he didn't not like them, but
Mhm.
he really wanted to, and still wants to eventually get a dog, but which I'm not opposed to either. But
Yeah, give me all the animals. I'm good with that. My husband
yeah,
would never allow it though.
yeah. So so Goblin actually wound up being my like he had like the fleeting effort of looking at the animal shelter, but that thought kind of came and went. But my best girlfriend had just given birth maybe about a year or two later, and found out very quickly that her newborn was allergic to cats. So she had to find something to do with Goblin, and my husband immediately went, I'll take her. And that was a fast decision on all parts because my friend was happy, Justin was happy.
Yeah, that worked out really well because it doesn't always turn out so well when it
Yeah.
comes to that. It's a tough situation to be put in. Elizabeth, have any of your kids ever been allergic to the cats? And if so, how did you handle that?
Well, my son is allergic now, but when he comes to visit, I force him to take allergy medicine. But we have a situation. I don't know what I'm going to do because my daughter came to visit unexpectedly. She was in Hawaii. We didn't expect her for the holidays. We were overjoyed when she rang the doorbell and showed up for Christmas. So she's been here for 2.5 weeks. She's leaving in a few days. And our kitten, Max, who was the reason that we got the idea for this podcast, has become so attached to her in 2 or 3
Yeah.
weeks. He is going to be so bummed out when she leaves. And
Aw.
I just don't even know how we're going to like soothe him. I guess we'll figure it out. Right. So cats do pick people, and he's been living with Richard and me. Of course, we've been giving him medication, and that's a whole nother story. So maybe he likes her because he doesn't have to.
He gets
get
to
it from
hang out
her.
and play.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because I've shared before about the story about how we got our first cat, Callie, is that she followed me home. I was on a walk, the trail by my house, and was like my best bud. I was like, all right, we'll take you in. That's a short version of the story. But then immediately became my husband's cat. Like,
Right.
not that she didn't want anything to do with me, but she pretty much didn't. And I think it's because I'm the one who took her to the vet. I'm the one who took her to get fixed. And she was like,
Yeah.
I want to hang out with him. He's funny. He doesn't bother me. So it's
So-
interesting, and she became his cat.
Right. So Molly, but I had a question for you. So you were living alone with your ginger cat. Your boyfriend was living alone with Goblin, or were you guys living together by the time you got Goblin?
So, and that was, as much as I love cats, I was very apprehensive about him getting Goblin because we were on the brink of moving in together.
So your
And-
ginger cat got a man and a cat at the same time. How did she like that?
Well, so here's the other thing about the way that Echo got along with my husband. She actually picked him for me because she hates everyone. Like, she used to like lunge at people unprovoked, was just one of those types. And so one day my husband was over when I was at my mom's house. He was over, we were all watching TV, and Echo, who was attached to me and only me, occasionally my mother, but mostly me, jumped onto the couch, walked across the couch, crossed over my lap to get to his lap, curled up and purred herself to sleep, which she had never done with anyone
Oh,
else
wow.
before.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we're all just like, what is happening? And I'm like, oh, it's a sign.
Yeah. And I'm
Stamp of
saying, oh,
approval.
wow, because one of my cats is like that. Like, if you even just like walk too close to him, he'll lunge at your feet, like, get away from me, and he'll hiss. He won't do any harm though, but he's the same. He's very selective of who he cuddles. So when one of my friends came over and he was very, very kind with her, we knew that she was special too. So it's cool
Yeah.
how animals have these senses.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a cat that he showed affection by just little nips, like little bites. And Richard, I was dating my husband Richard, this is a long time ago. And Richard was sitting in a chair with his foot up on his knee, and the cat walked by and bit his big toe and then kept going.
Oh my gosh.
It was so funny. But that was his stamp of approval. So
then
Echo was okay.
So she was more than okay with him. Goblin, it took them a little while to, there she goes, she's shaking the camera on me. So Goblin, it took a while for them to get acclimated to each other, and they never became friends. I would call them frenemies at best.
Mhm.
But we were doing everything that we could to try to get them to there were a couple times where I brought Echo over to his apartment for like a couple hours before we moved in together, so that and kept one of the cats in the carrier, let the other one roam around, so that the two of them could get used to each other.
Mhm.
When we moved into the house, we kept Echo in our bedroom and let Goblin roam around, but we installed like a screen door in the bedroom so that they could come up against it and like sniff each other.
That was smart.
Yeah, and that was all him. He's the engineer that thinks of these things and builds these things.
Yeah, because I know that they say like the best way to do the introductions is to keep them completely separate first, let them smell each other, let them see each
Exactly.
other. So it sounds like you did all of those things.
Yeah, and so I forget when exactly we took it down and started getting them to try to interact with each other, but it was still a bumpy road because they still got in each other's faces, and I was just kind of concerned on both of their ends because Echo, as much as I hate saying this out loud, we had to get her declawed when she was a kitten because it was the only compromise between my brother wanting a bird and me wanting a cat. So in order to keep from traumatizing the bird, because we would walk in and see the cat clung to the side of the bird cage. That was really the only agreement that we could have. So Echo didn't have her front claws. Her back ones, yes. Her front ones, no. And
Was
Goblin,
was this when you were a kid at your parents' house? You were living with your
yes,
brother?
because
Oh,
I
so
got yeah,
you
I
didn't
got
have a
the
lot of say in it if you were a kid then, right?
exactly. I got her when
Yeah.
I was 14, and I mean it made logical sense because of the fact that the bird is an animal too that should probably not be traumatized every living moment.
Yeah, it's
But
actually illegal now in New Jersey to do
yeah,
that.
it is. It
To
is.
do what? To declaw?
Declaw. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty harsh for the cat.
Yeah. And so that was so.
And it's interesting. You can actually, whoever's watching it, you can actually see me shutting down right now on the
But
topic.
but
I'm
I
not
think
meaning
it's
to.
I think it's
Yeah.
important to listen to
Mhm.
Molly because she's saying not having the claws was a
Mhm.
disadvantage for Echo when another
Yep.
cat was brought in the house.
Yeah, and I mean, like as a kid, we did what we had to do to make everyone happy and make everyone as comfortable as possible in the house. But like as I grew older and learned exactly what went into that, I'm like, it made me all the more motivated to spoil the heck out of Echo in every other way I can. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I mean, I think she forgave me because she, made it 19 and a half years. So she lived a pretty good life otherwise. But I think one of her defenses in turn was she became a biter. Well, she kind of always was, but like, so I was like, I don't know which cat I'm concerned for more because Goblin has and uses her front claws regularly, but I mean, Echo's bites are really strong. So we had to keep an eye on both of them because if they got into a fight, I was like not sure who was going to like who we had to watch more.
Yeah, what's really interesting is when I first brought together Thor and then Loki, I was very busy. I didn't do the proper introductions of them. We could talk about that another time, but because I had no clue what I was doing. And then when they finally did get into like their first air quote fight, I thought they were fighting because it sounded so vicious. But then after I actually observed it, they were just kind of making those warning sounds to each other. So I know it's different with different animals where some could be really rough, but I was just so scared because of the noises that were coming out of these cute little fluffy things. I thought someone was getting murdered. So I didn't know any better. And I just, remember growing up, just shoot them with water. So I shot them with water and actually made it worse. So then I felt terrible because I'm like, I'm a bad cat mom. I don't know what I'm doing. And I actually called up one of the women that I met through learning all the rescue stuff. And she's like, why would you do that? So then I felt worse. And she's like, no, I'm just asking, like, what made you do that? So it's like that scary balance, nervous balance of like, just let them get it out. And then versus like, but what if they hurt each other? So I don't know. That sounds like you were in a really complicated situation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it took a lot of supervision with them, but I mean, eventually got to the point where we kind of figured that that because we also noticed too when they'd get into slap fights, but Goblin wasn't really using her claws. And I don't know whether she understood that it was because Echo didn't have any herself when she was swatting at Goblin, or if Goblin just saw that Echo was just like basically using her as a punching bag and went, okay, I do same, and then just like was mimicking her. I don't know. But
then did they eventually just kind of like get their own boundaries around each other and kind of
for the most part, they like the two of them could actually be near each other, like even in this photo where
I was
they're
just gonna
both
say sitting in the sun by the window. Yeah.
yeah, as long as they have their personal space. But Goblin also, so Goblin was about 10 years younger than Echo. So she was a lot more playful, or is a lot more playful. And whereas Echo was getting older, she was sick for a long time too. Like she had pretty much from the time that she and Goblin moved in together, she had the beginning of kidney failure. So she was less inclined to play. And so sometimes Goblin wanted a playmate and didn't really care for me or my husband to play with. She wanted to play with the other being in the room that was most like her, and Echo wanted nothing of it. So that tended to be the origin of most of their fights after a while.
We had a major breakthrough. So this is kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it short. So we got a new cat tree because I realized that Max had this tapeworm and the little things were everywhere. So we threw out the old cat tree, got a new one. And then my cleaning lady sprayed our plants in the sunroom. And I was like, well, maybe that's what's bothering him. So I told my husband we had to move. Well, we just did it. My daughter and I just did it without. We figured it was better to ask forgiveness and permission. So we moved the cat tree into the family room. And it's a pretty big cat tree. And the breakthrough was the cats love having it there. My old cat, Mercutio, who's like 11, almost 12, but he acts really young. And he's a very sweet, nice cat, was actually playing with Max, the kitten, on the cat tree. And Max used to drive him crazy, but they actually were playing together. And I was so happy to see that. That's the first time they've been playing together a little bit, but this really went a long way. So that was my Christmas present, I guess. Seeing my boys getting along.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mollie, for Goblin now. So I know that Echo passed away. She's in Little Rainbow. Is that what they call it? Up in a rainbow, gosh,
Rainbow
what's it called?
Bridge.
Thank you.
Yes.
Went over the Rainbow Bridge. So right now I know in the rescue stuff that we do, a lot of people are saying, cats are better in pairs, like get all your cats in pairs. So then did you sense any change in Goblin after Echo passed away, that you felt that you had to immediately go and get another cat, or what was your experience like there?
We we did experience, I did notice a change in her, but not one that suggested we need to get another cat. Actually, quite the opposite. Because first off, after we lost Echo, she worked overtime, like trying to be more affectionate and comfort us, which
Aww.
I thought was just like her sensing something was wrong and wanting to be
That's
around
really
us
good
more.
at sensing that stuff. Yeah.
But then that really never went away. Like she's just become wanting to be more affectionate, wanting to be closer to us, and wanting all the attention. Just indefinitely. Like it seems to have been a permanent change. And so part of me wonders if she had been deferring to Echo this whole time, because Echo was a bit of an alpha cat, perhaps because she was sickly for most of the time that they had together, so we tended to prioritize her a bit just to make sure that she was okay. So, and
yeah,
I
I do think cats hold back. I know Mercutio held back because Checkers was such a dominant force in our house. Checkers thought she was human. She hated every single other cat. She loved humans. And I know when we brought Mercutio in, he kind of stood back, and now he's the dominant cat in the house. And he'll actually claim me in front of the other cats and put his hand on me or sit on my lap or whatever when the other cats are around, like, I get her, she's mine. And I do think they changed. And maybe you don't get another cat, but at the same time,
that's what my question was leading towards, is like, do you kind of let her live in her glory, like now that she seems to be sounding like she wants to be an only cat? Or
for now, yes. Because it's always, I mean, we'll see where things go, because at the same time that, I mean, she seems to enjoy it, and part of me feels kind of bad, or felt kind of bad when we first started noticing that this was a less than temporary change, because I'm like, is this how you wanted us to treat you this whole time? And then we've just been spending all of our attention on Echo. I'm so sorry. Have all this spoiling treats and pets and everything we can give you. So on one hand, if the situation presents itself, we're not going to say no. On the other hand,
like if Danielle sends you a text message with 32 pictures of cats, I mean,
was
like,
just
what's
gonna
the boundary
say,
here?
The thing is, like, you're saving a life. You're giving a cat an incredible life if they come to live with you. And so it is a quandary. It's like, well, I want my cat now to have a good life, but I could help another cat. And it's kind of weird because I feel like people kind of settle into the number of cats they're going to have. Like, we always have 3 cats.
right.
We tried to be a 2-cat household, had to get another cat. So I don't know. Are you a 1-cat household or a 2-cat household? I guess you have to decide.
Yeah, my only concern is that if we were to get a cat, it would have to be a as much as I want to kind of veer towards like older cats or cats that are not as popular at the shelter, we would have to get like a younger, healthier cat because
100%. And a good
Yeah.
rescue would
Yeah.
make sure to match you up that way too.
because
Sorry to
Goblin
interrupt
spent-
you, but you're 100% correct.
she spent so many of her years deferring to the sick cat in our house that, and she's 12 now, so she's entering her golden years. So I don't want her to spend the second half of her life also being number 2. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Well, Mercutio's the same age, and we had Lily when Checkers died, so we had Mercutio and Lily, and they loved being the only 2 cats. And then I brought Max in as a tiny, like they didn't even know he was there at first because he was so little. He weighed 1 pound and he was so sick, and we were like taking care of him, and they were just doing their thing. And I think Mercutio was upset somewhat at first, but now he's playing with him. So I think it's, you can't have 2 cats on your lap at the same time if they'll do it. I used to have, I have an old picture of myself when I was younger with laying on a sofa with 3 cats on my chest.
I think that was what a preemptive picture of what your future was going to look like.
the 3
The 3 cats, because you always have 3 cats. Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now a cat's about to fall on my head. Just so you
I
know.
I saw that tail go in front of your face.
I was trying not to distract you guys, but yeah,
But,
so Loki
yeah.
does that. He's actually on a Zoom meeting before. I was speaking at an online conference. I don't remember what the topic was, but he literally came falling out of the sky because he has no fear and he just knows that we're going to help him. So like, even if I'm falling and he's in front of me, he won't move out of the way because he just knows I won't hurt him. So I'd rather like snap my neck and hurt myself than actually fall on him. But he fell right on my head and I caught him like this. I just kept talking and I went like this. And everyone was like, time out. Did you plan that? What was that? It was funny, but he likes vertical spaces. So back to like the number of cats, like we know we can't get more right now. So I do have spare rooms in my home and working with the rescue, working with all this stuff. I just can't take in even fosters because my last 2 cats were foster fails just because I know it'll disrupt the flow of the cats in my
So
home.
a foster fail is a foster that becomes your permanent cat.
Oh yeah.
Is that
yeah.
right?
After 8 months of me going back and forth to adoption day with these guys and dealing with illnesses and emergency procedures and worms and all that fun stuff. And I actually learned then that even if they look healthy when they're little, there's certain medicine you have to give them. And Elizabeth, I know that you had an experience recently with that too, right?
I did the dump, like I should know this because I've had multiple cats nearly my whole life. I like to say I was born with a cat in my arms. And I dewormed Max, but I didn't deworm the other 2 cats. And then because we had found like what looked like tapeworm segments where he had been sleeping. And then I looked where Lily had been sleeping or Cushy, I'm not even sure which one. It looked like there was a segment there. So I'm like, duh, like if you have one cat that has worms, you've got to treat all your cats, right? Because they're going to go in the same places and pass them back and forth. And then now that they're back, because we had dewormed him, I have to give him the medicine, but I want to talk to the vet because he's on other medicine. Now we have the only way to get rid of these stupid things, you have to, I guess, vacuum them up and then take a steamer and steam where the cat was sleeping, where the segments are. So I did buy a steamer and we steamed a lot already, but I'm going to have to go steam the new cat tree now with this to make sure everything's killed. But
Don't you wish there was like a manual? So that's why, like I joked a
Yeah.
couple episodes ago, like we're by no means experts, just all the stuff we've been learning along the way and wanting to share stories of what other people have gone through. But same thing, when I was doing rescue, I had no idea. And I felt silly because the rescue was like, oh, we thought we told you that, because I was such a go-getter. Like they were trying to help me with stuff. I'm like, oh, I looked it up. Oh, I'm good. Oh, I did this. So then eventually just kind of let me do my thing. And they're like, I thought you knew what you were doing, Danielle. Like,
Well, isn't it,
I don't.
like, I can't believe I made such a rookie mistake. It's like, I know better than that, but you kind of forget the things you've learned along the way if your cats are healthy and you don't have any with problems. So, but
now,
yeah,
Mollie, you had, you mentioned that, you found out Echo was sick and that was like a long road. Was there anything that you learned that you think that if you had known sooner, maybe you would have done differently, or something, or a tip or a piece of advice for someone else who might be going through a similar issue with their fur babies right now?
For me, and I may have 1 or 2 regrets down the line, across the line. One thing that I'm very thankful for were the decisions that I made surrounding her illness, because so she had so she had kidney disease that progressed into kidney failure. And so when it was in the earlier stages, all we had to do was just switch her over to prescription food. And just, bring her in for regular checkups, keep an eye on it, monitor it, and so on and so forth. And so as it started progressing into kidney failure, that was when the vets were trying to push the fluid therapy. Where you have like the needle that you stick in their neck a couple times a week for that whole shebang. And for some cats, for some temperaments, that's a perfectly fine thing to do. But I knew my cat was not going to handle it well. She didn't even like getting flea medication. She didn't like anything of that sort. So I'm like, and you have to do this a couple times a week for like indefinitely. And in my head, I'm like, well, I had said to the vet, I'm like, all right, well, if we choose not to do that, what lifespan are we talking about? And he basically said it could be on average about 1 to 2 months. I was like, I would prefer to have 1 to 2 months left with her where I just spoil her and stick around as much as I can and kind of like scale back on plans out of the house just to be with her and give her pets and treats and I said the T word in front of Goblin.
Oh gosh. Careful. I hope my cats didn't hear that through my AirPods.
Well, Mollie, I think you made exactly the right decision.
Yeah.
Because I did that to an older cat. I did the needle in the back and the fluid, and he was my favorite cat, and it just ruined our relationship.
Yeah.
He dreaded seeing me coming, and I think giving some medicine, like we have to give Max a lot of medicine now, and occasionally the other cats, is okay. But like when you're sticking a needle in their back, that's horrible.
Yeah. And
you have the support of your vet working with you on it too.
Well,
That's
see,
a tough choice.
I was not a strong enough personality or advocate at that time to know that I could make that decision myself and just say, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this to my cat. I don't care what you think. And I applaud you, Mollie, for doing what you did. That was excellent.
Yeah. And fate had a way of telling me that it was the right decision too, because instead of living for another 2 months, she made it 2.5 years.
Wow.
So we were a bit confused after a while because I just was like, oh, she's not going to make it past Thanksgiving. And then, 6 months later, I'm like, well, I guess I should make an appointment for another checkup at the vet. And so we just kept going. And then, and so she kept going. And I mean, to your point though, there were some cats and some temperaments can take it. Like I try not to like harp down on the like it's don't go sticking needles and into your cats. They don't know what they're doing. It's torture. Because on the other hand, my brother had a cat who was diabetic, and they were giving him treatments and trying to prolong his life as much as they could. But he had the right temperament for it. It didn't ruin their relationship. It did help him for the better. So it really depends on the cat on their temperament and on their prognosis, and each one is different. So it's sometimes the best thing to do is to let go. Sometimes the best thing to do is hang on.
Now, if you guys are listening and this is a topic where you're like, you know what, I can really offer some really good guidance or advice or tips, please let us know. If you go to our website, thejerseypodcats.com, there's an option there where you can leave a voicemail or send a text message, because we want to have these conversations, share these stories of how we can support each other. Being the cat lovers that we are, not one decision is exactly correct for everybody.
Right. And my cat Checkers, I took her to the vet, and her thyroid was acting up, and there was medication I could give her, or she could have this treatment. And so I took her to this vet like an hour away, and they did these tests on her and said, oh, she has a lump somewhere else. It could grow, it may not. And she was 15 at the time, and they wanted to cut her open and take this lump out before they do the thyroid thing. But she was on the thyroid medicine. And I was just like, you're not cutting open a 15-year-old cat. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to do that to her. It would just so disrupt her quality of life. And she's 15 already. Like, how much longer is she really going to live? And I just wouldn't do it to her because I knew she would just hate it so much. And she lived another year, and I gave her the thyroid medicine, but it got to the point She was such a stubborn cat. She would clamp her teeth together so tight when it came time to get medicine.
Yeah, but I bet you if you took out the treats, she'd be fine. But as soon as she saw the medicine, I shared on a and I shared on a previous episode about how I have to trick my one cat to take his medicine through using the gravy tube treats. Like I can't even have the smell of the medicine on my hand. So I have to use one hand to handle the meds and then put that hand away and then use the other hand with the gravy. Otherwise he knows and he'll walk away and he won't take it.
And are you using like pills or liquid?
Pills for my cat. The liquid wouldn't work. It was definitely too much.
Max spits half his antibiotic out. You know, I try to squirt it straight down his throat, but that's another episode we definitely have to do is what is the best way to get medicine into a cat? And maybe we even have a vet come on that one.
Yeah. Because I've always, anything with pills, like they spit the entire pill out and I'm like, it could be sometime when I'm not even looking. And 6 months later, I'm like, cleaning under the bed and I see half a cat pill. Yeah. So I've always done liquid, just
I've
point and shoot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, with Max, I have to give him all this medicine all the time. And you're right. And he's got a tiny little head. He's still a kitten and a tiny little mouth. And these pills are huge. Yeah. So if we get pills, what we do is we grind them up with a mortar and pestle and then put them in liquid and shoot it down. And then he spits half of it out. But at least he got
but he's taking half of it. Yeah.
So Mollie, the other thing I wanted to ask you, and it's funny how we started, I was like, we're not going to do this as an interview, but there's stuff as you guys are talking that I'm thinking of that I want to ask you about. What is a way that you honored your ginger girl after she passed? Because I think this story is very sweet.
Yes. So I got a tattoo of her paw print on my upper leg so that she'll always have a paw on my lap.
Aww, that is so sweet. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you thought you were going to get away with being on the show without me asking you this question. Well, what is a funny cat joke you can tell us?
Funny cat joke.
You had to know I was going to ask.
I should have. Oh, rats. So this isn't a joke, but I know we were like before the recording started, we were talking about different cat puns. And one of my favorite memes that goes around that, half your listeners have probably already heard, but I'm going to say anyway, is when they point out that the word homeowner has the word meow in the middle of it. And they're like, bet you're never going to pronounce that the same way anymore. And I don't.
It's funny. I don't think I've seen that one or heard that. Home meowner. Oh yeah, I'm probably going to say it like that from now on.
Home meowner.
Home meowner. My goodness.
Well, Danielle sent me a Christmas text. Meowy Christmas. That was so cute. Yeah.
And of course, right as the cat that was falling on my head decided to sneak out the door, you would have seen him, but that was Loki that just walked by. Okay. So anything that you would like to add or share that we didn't touch on already? I feel like we can keep talking for a while. And I know that every cat lover has different stories and experiences, but I just love how open you are about sharing about what you went through with your kitty cats.
Yeah. And I think the most important part, and just getting back to with like Echo and the, especially like, you tend to have a lot of what ifs, and especially around the time that they're ill, like things that are there things we should have done differently, and whether it's like at the time of their illness or just flashing back on their entire life. And I think one of the comforting parts about when a cat does pass away is that when you see them at the end, and when you see and when you actually do reflect on what they've been through, the most important part that matters is what they were to you and what you were to them at that point. So even like any decisions that we made regarding her care, anything that, should I have done the fluid therapy? Should I not have? Or even, again, I hate bringing up the declawing thing, but like back then, as I was reflecting on it throughout the course of her life, like thinking, I understand that we did it because of the bird, but maybe the humane thing would have been to like not get her at all and wait until my brother moved out. But then I would not have had this relationship with her. So and which was so important, not just to me, but clearly to her, based on all the interactions that we've had throughout our life. like the decision, oh, should like she was on the counter and I might have swiped her off too quickly. Did I like damage her paw or something? Like like little things and big things. And and the comforting thing when their life ends is that you can look back on it and there's no more worrying, there's no more regretting. You know what happened, and and the most important things that stick out to you when you go back on it are the positive things. So you know that overall, good and bad, it was net positive, and that you gave them the best that you could, and that they appreciated it.
Thank you for that. You just made me feel good because we lost one of our cats last year, and it's still a journey of going through that. And I know, Elizabeth, you still, sorry,
Checkers
you got me all choked up, Molly.
Checkers is
Sorry,
buried.
I thought we were gonna laugh today.
Checkers is buried in the
Homeyowner.
backyard. Yeah, Checkers is in the
Homeyowner.
backyard with an angel on top of her grave. And
Yeah.
I had, my husband's gonna kill me for telling you this. He goes
Hey,
out,
whisper, he won't hear you.
he goes out to the backyard and talks to Checkers.
Aw.
Mm.
I know she was so important to us, but I do think we make the best decisions we can at the time. And are they always the right decisions? There's absolutely no way to know, right?
Yeah.
Like when you were a kid, you could either get a cat and declaw, or you couldn't have a cat at all. And so you made what you, and there were vets doing it. So like
And we didn't know what it meant, honestly. I
Yeah,
didn't know what
and
it
that
meant until a
was-
couple years ago. So
right. Then there were vets doing it. So it's like, okay, well, it's, standard practice in places. So that's what I'm going to do. And then now you probably would never do that again, but you didn't even have that total decision yourself. So, and she lived a long, happy life. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this, but I've had pieces of my body cut off. I'm still going. I'm still happy, So, I mean, life is what it is. And I'm sure she would have rather lived with you, declawed, than have been wild in the streets and died at 2 years old, like a lot of them.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because I was thinking, I'm like, well, I didn't have a say in it, but I also don't want to like blame my family or my parents as the villains either, because
Oh, not at all.
I
I think
but,
as a
yeah.
collective, none of us really
No,
knew what it
I
meant.
don't think
yeah,
there's-
and it happened like it was
Right.
back in. I'm like thinking to myself, this was a decision we made back in 2001. You know what also happened in 2001? We got the internet
Yeah.
in our house. Information was not that readily available, even if we wanted
Right.
to.
Yeah, and
But-
that's a whole other show too, is like I held on to some upsetness. I promise I make up words, they make sense to my brain. Growing up about decisions made with pets. But now that I'm a grown up, which is still questionable, but now that I'm a grown up, and I've had my own experiences, I now can understand why certain decisions were made when I was younger about pets. So it's very interesting. that
Yeah.
we can sharing with each other.
And with the what ifs too, a friend of mine from many moons ago actually and this doesn't just apply to pets, but with pretty much anything else in life where you're like, what if I did this differently? What if I did this differently? But one time I was having one of those like days of mental gymnastics, and a friend of mine goes, well, okay, what if you did this differently? You say, but you know what you did, and you know what happened, and everything's going to be okay. Who knows if your what if would have turned out worse? You don't. So you know what you did, everything's fine, and you just move on.
Well
Right.
said. Well, thank you
Yes.
guys. I feel like there's so many topics feeding into one another that we're definitely gonna have you back on, Molly.
I would love to. There's very little I love to talk about more.
Right. If you do get another cat, you definitely have to come on and talk about that at the very least. But yeah, there's a lot more to get into. And maybe we should force you into a little bit more of a stand-up routine next time. I don't know.
I mean, I probably could come up with a bunch of cat themed jokes, but I don't know. Like, do we have to keep it clean on this podcast, or?
We'll
Haven't
have
really
to think.
talked about
Yeah,
that,
we'll figure that out. I don't know.
A
We're
very
like I
special
said,
episode.
yeah, the first few episodes we're just kind of winging it and seeing where it goes. So if the
Yeah.
format seems different to you, or longer or shorter, no problem. We're just figuring it out as we go. So the important thing was we were talking about doing it. We wanted to just do it versus trying to get it all perfect. And I'm glad we did,
Right.
because there was a lot of great content today.
And
Molly,
yeah, what's really fun, Danielle, I just want to say this before we go, is I'm really happy that we just were able to allow the conversation to go where it went and got into some kind of deep things that we normally probably don't talk to people about that I think that were very important. So thank you, Mollie and Danielle.
Oh, thank you. You guys are lovely. I enjoyed this so much. Thank you.
Great. So we'll have some connection info for Mollie in the what do we call them? Show notes. We'll figure that out too. If there's anything you want to wrap up with, Mollie, we'll go ahead and go. And it sounds like I need to get another cup of coffee because my brain is shutting off.
Nothing in particular for me to wrap up on. Just
Okay.
enjoy
All right.
yourselves, enjoy your cats, and enjoy our talk.
Take care,
Oh,
everybody.
Loki's
Thank you
coming
so
back.
much. Let's
Meow.
see. Oh, nope, that is Tony.
Oh. Oh.
That's Tony. And cut.